Welcome one and all to the debut of a series that might also end up being a finale depending on how long my inspiration lasts. You may remember in the Illhaven video I said I set a goal to play every custom Unreal map there was. So how was that experience? Well, I actually stopped at around the G's. Didn't really get too far as it turns out. Hopefully I can pick up the collection and try to get them all played and out of my bucket list. So as I'm replaying all these maps, I'm going to try and give a brief review on each campaign. It should be noted that these most likely will not be as impassioned as the Illhaven one, since most of these maps are pretty bad, not really deserving of a sincere tone. I might package multiple campaigns into one video since they are usually pretty short. I even got this whole review system set up. Let's go over that real quick. I will grade each series on 3 aspects: how interesting the story is, how well designed the levels are, and how good the gameplay is. The gameplay is determined by things like difficulty, potential game-breaking soft locks, and overall fun, which of course is subjective. To give a sense of scale, 10 out of 10 story will be like Illhaven, since I think it has the best I've seen. 0 out of 10 would be Ashton Kutcher fanfic by Melissa Bell. Hopefully nothing is that bad though. 10 out of 10 design would be Assault Orion's Curse for Unreal Tournament. This map doesn't even belong in a game from 1999. 0 out of 10 design would be this map I made from when I was 5. 10 out of 10 gameplay, I'd say, is also Illhaven. 0 out of 10 gameplay would be, let's see, what's a terrible game? Dark Souls 2, boom, moving on. I think I'll just keep this video pertaining to one custom map, since the next one is multi-leveled and I'd rather do that one by itself. Let's kick it off with the campaign called 3 Crystals. 3 Crystals. We haven't even started yet, and the official name has a typo in it. Normally something like that would be a bad indicator of what's to come, but it turns out it's simply because the person who made this was German and didn't know much English. I found this info in the readme that comes with every map. Let's actually read through the rest. You are a famous archaeologist. Infiltrate La Palerma village through the catacombs because there are 3 crystals in a big tower and you want to find them for your museum. You can see the tower from everywhere. You ever know what to do next? I hope. You have to steal the 3 crystals and go back to the start point in the catacombs. Some of that is hard to understand, but I think the general idea is apparent. There's a tower with some pretty crystals and you're hunting for them to put in a museum. Simple. Starting off this level, we're actually in a sewer next to a ladder that we climb to enter the city. The first translator message pretty much restates everything in the readme, so there's no need to read that. The entire level takes place in a quiet and alley town using similar building design to that of the Skytown in Unreal. The music was also the same, leading me to believe that that level was used as inspiration. I ventured around to try and observe the level for a few minutes before searching on how to progress. Then I figured out I had no gun, and so I clearly missed something. I had to head all the way back to the beginning to jump on some boxes into a house. The first thing I noticed was that the weapon had this glowing red light on it. In fact, most items had a glowing light around it. I kind of liked this lighting choice as it was one I hadn't seen before. I was a bit bothered by the author's use of translator messages in this campaign. I kept walking over books thinking there'd be a message in a diary or something, but rather than being used to tell stories through books and signs, they were mostly fourth wall breaking guidance hints hand-delivered by the author. The only ones that were remotely world-building were the ones in front of buildings, like, who could forget, the library, or the Dead Alley Inn. Also, for the record, I don't think that's a realistic name. I'm sure we don't have places on the Earth called the Dead Human Hotel. It's not exactly the most inviting title. You barely even tried. So that was my first little rant. As I play ahead, things are pretty standard. You have to venture through the houses to make it past the obstacles in the city, like here when I hopped window to window to get to the house containing the gate lever. I actually need to compliment on lever placement. It's always good when your destination is in view of what activates it so you can see what you did. I always appreciate that kind of thing. This next puzzle actually kind of confused me though. When I hopped through this window, there was clearly a door, but it was overshadowed and unable to be opened. But when I examined closer where I needed to go, I found there was a small ledge I had to walk across to get to it. I also had to walk across a lamp hanging from ropes, which can be seen nowhere else in the town until I needed to use it. That kind of convenience doesn't look good on design. Within a staggering 5 minutes, we already made it to the tower, and so now we just need to find how to get to the top. But I ran into a problem. Remember when I mentioned potential game-breaking softlocks in the gameplay section? Well, it was motivated by personal experience. You see, There was this pipe I had to open to go underground. I mistook it as an elevator and stood on top of it, but was confused when nothing happened. What happened was, this was a trigger once only mover, meaning once it's triggered, it remains in its next state permanently. It also happened to be a return when encroached mover, meaning if something gets in the way while it's moving, it will return to its original closed position. In layman's terms, I got in the way and that forced it to shut permanently, preventing me from progressing. These are dangerous things you need to watch for. So before I talk about what happened after I reloaded the save, let me point out some things about this area. I felt like this place was half complete. Some of the main attractions seemed like proper attention was given to them, but the walls of the place were completely empty. The moat going around was very square and the ground was just flat grass. At the same time, there was this building on the other side of the pit which was done magnificently. It starts small at the base and grows bigger as it goes toward the ceiling. Here on Earth, things grow smaller at the top to prevent it from falling over or collapsing. And seeing something built in this polar opposite way really makes it seem alien. Regardless of how unsensible it is, I'm a huge fan of this bizarre structure. Extra points because it reminds me of the Western Air Temple in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Back to where we were. I opened the pipe correctly this time and navigated through some sewer tunnels. And might I say, if this isn't the worst looking part of the map. Not just because sewers are filthy, but I mean, look at this. The texture used was terrible and the cylinders were mashed together in whichever way to make them connect. You can visibly see all the places where it cut in irregularly. This probably isn't too great for the BSP either. Here's where things actually got a bit confusing for me. I used the sewer to make it inside the tower and now I can go to the top, right? Apparently not. Once I get inside, the only thing in there for me is a lever for the front door just so I can leave again. So what do we do? It turns out there was an open window the entire time in the upside down house, but that renders that entire area optional and by extension useless. I guess it wasn't actually a game-breaking softlock I was talking about earlier. You got lucky this time, David, but I'm still not a fan of your attempts to throw me off course. Now that I'm back on the right track, I enter the house whose interior compares nothing to the outside of which I spoke earlier. An elevator brings me to the top where I am to greet the single fat crawl on guard duty. There was a wooden plank that I was supposed to knock over Super Mario 64 style to create a bridge across... Wait, did I just see that correctly? Yeah, I don't think that plank passed physics. Let's just roll with it. Across this wooden plank, I was ready to argue that it made no sense for a crawl to be over here, since that implies the only way to get there was across that plank. But it seems Munich actually did put a little attention to detail in this room. There's a small protrusion in the room with this green door texture. This was the same texture used in the pointless room below for those fake doors.
Real fake doors, that's us! See, watch, check this out! Won't open! Won't open!
There must have been an elevator behind this that he just decided to close off to the player. Here we are, the climax, the pinnacle of the story, the moment we've spoke of since before I started. The 3 crystals sitting atop podiums for us to grab at our leisure. One thing I noticed while I was grabbing these was that this tower is unsurprisingly the highest point in the map. But what that means is I can see over the walls and into the skybox, making for a really peculiar sight. I'm betting that Munich knew about this problem, but it would be too big of a problem to fix, so he just left it. I know I would if I realized this at the last possible moment. Still, it looks bad. When I grab the last crystal, the music changes to something tense and fast, and I'm told I need to now run back to the start. For some reason, when I was playing this, I thought it meant I had to race back to the start, as if I was on a timer or something. I used the water at the bottom to cushion my fall. If I didn't know better, I'd say that was the only reason it was put there. I head backwards, but things aren't as easy as you'd expect. Certain obstacles that weren't there before now pose a hindrance, like this door. It turns out I was supposed to hop over the wall using these boxes, which didn't have a purpose until now. I kind of like things designed that way. Things that seem to have no use being placed there until their meaning and purpose is redefined later by something you couldn't foresee. It makes things feel more scripted, but at the same time, it's still interesting. Along with these obstacles, a flock of crawl have spawned all throughout the map. Again, thinking I was on a time crunch, I didn't waste too much time fighting them. With only a few casualties along the way, I make it to the exact same spot I entered, a decrepit sewer. The quintessential end of a game. Now we're left with questions. What will happen to the fair village we robbed? Did we really beat the map if 20 crawl are still alive and chasing us? Will there ever be more suspended lamps installed in the city? Okay, fine, there's not really any questions worth asking. It's not like the whole journey was really that compelling or open for continuity. And that's not really a criticism, I just didn't know how to end this whole thing. Well, everything that needed to be said about this map was said, and I don't have much else to add. Full disclosure, this wasn't really my first choice on what map to review. It was just the first one in the list. It has been several months since I started making this video, and in that time, I've played through a lot of other maps far more deserving of commentary. In my Illhaven video, I made a point that many people might not think that much effort was worth that video, and I disagree. But for this map, I agree. I don't want to spend a moment longer doing this, but there was some purpose in the end. 3 crystals sets the standard for an average Unreal campaign. It's mostly average in every way, and it's what I've come to expect from the ones that I start. So even though I've begun reconsidering reviewing every map I go through, that does not mean this one was a waste of time. Not every map is meant to be really good or bad. Sometimes you just need an average start to make it an easy jump in both directions. And yes, I do intend on doing some of the worst maps, so stay tuned.